welcome to our gem pursuit. Matthew here, and with me for our 100th time. Yes, I can't quite believe that. For our 100th time is my trustiest of trusty co-hosts, Alyce Ketcher. Alyce, how are you today?
I cannot believe that I have endured you for 100 episodes, Matthew, and you've endured me. And everybody else has listened to us and endured us together.
I've enjoyed every moment of it, to be honest with you. And I can't wait to get started onto this 100th episode. And it is one that we've touched on before, but it's a name, if you're in the jewellery business, it's one that sends a shiver down your spine.
And due to the fact that we've had such a large amount of our listeners talk about the firm favorite series that we had, this particular episode was left off of the firm favorites, but it was literally the next episode that we were going to do. So we're wrapping up the 100th episode with a bow today, or a dragonfly with a woman's head, with René Lalique.
Just the word Lalique, it inspires and it conjures up all sorts of fantastical images. It's still around today, albeit in many different guises, different forms, which is perhaps appropriate based on the origins of this particular brand. Let's just give a quick introduction into the House of Lalique.
So Lalique himself didn't come from a very wealthy family. He had all of the talent, the artistic flair, and was able to produce amazing figural art. But because of his lack of funding and because of the circumstances in which he was born, he could have just been, a talented nobody. He could have ended up in a workshop somewhere working for someone and not be the household name that he is today. And I think that's what really makes me inspired by his story because of where he came from and what he was able to achieve.
Well, Alyce, it makes me think about how many other potential Laliques were out there, but that's just part of it, right? So he was the one who, progressed and built a brilliant and big, by the end of it, a massive company, actually.
So we're looking at a boy who was born in the 1860s in a very rural area of France. His family moved to Paris when he was quite young, and his dad was involved in politics. But his dad died when René was actually 16 years old. And this kind of is where it catapults him into the jewelry industry to begin with. So, like I said, he starts off working as an apprentice in La Maison Alcock. And this apprenticeship was done over a 2-year period, and they were very renowned goldsmiths. And even today, the Louvre has pieces from Alcock there. And we continually also look for pieces from this particular jewelry firm. So it's super celebrated and would have been a huge win for him personally to be able to be an apprentice there. However, what is really interesting about this is Lalique's apprenticeship introduced him to the jewelry world, showed him, technical skills, showed him how to make jewelry, how to make it functional. But it also introduced him to the emerging Art Nouveau movement. And this is pivotal in Lalique's life because, the only way that I can describe it, right, is like seeing someone, when you introduce a baby to a lemon and you see the expression on the baby's face, they start off and they don't know what they're getting into. They bite into the lemon and their face just it reacts. And I feel...
I do have nephews who live in in Murcia in Spain and they eat a lot of lemons. They actually love lemons. But
yes, but it's
Spanish children.
No, but it's when you first introduce, right? So it's like you aren't expecting what you're about to receive. And I feel like this was a true awakening for René Lalique in what was to come in his future. The introduction to the aesthetic that you see from the Art Nouveau period almost explodes in his mind, and we get to see the result of it, which is, in this case, something that has never before been seen and never ever will be seen again. And he is the creator of it.
Not everyone at the time appreciated his new design, and he always had this kind of rebellious streak. He did actually submit a design to Boucheron at one stage, massive jewelry company, antique world people. You know, Boucheron, the name is up there with Cartier and all the other top French firms. They actually rejected some of his designs. And, you know, again, he had that entrepreneurial streak, so he actually ended up making this design by himself. I think it's also important just noting it from his youth. He continually went back to the country, which is super important for the way he developed his ideas, because, you know, and the French countryside today, there's some beautiful French countryside, but back then it would have been really like wild, like the wilderness, right? It was agricultural as well, of course.
I'm laughing, everybody, because I grew up in Australia, and I don't believe people in Europe outside of Romania know what the wild is.
Yeah, but this was in the 1870s. So it's a little bit different time. Yeah, no. I mean, today we don't know wilderness. Like, Ireland has beautiful countryside, but it's a patchwork of farms. When you land, you're like, oh my God, it's so green. But it's all a patchwork of farms. It's not wilderness per se. Although some parts out the west get a bit hairy. But yeah, Australia has total wilderness where, like, you could drive for hours and
there's nothing.
There's nothing. Just spiders everywhere.
And animals.
He was extremely talented, even from a very young age. And he said the death of his father, that really brought an end to his carefree youth. And as is normal in those times, you just start working very young. That was it. Like, you start working, it's probably a job for life. No, not for him, but
Well, he had no choice. I mean, when your father passes away at that age, and, you know, you have a mother who probably can't work to actually provide for the family, it does land in your lap. But one thing I really enjoy about him is not just the fact that he was an apprentice, but after his 2-year apprenticeship, he moves again to England, and he continues his studies. And when he continues his studies, he doesn't just study art, he studies science, literature. He continues to learn everything that he can. And he's also then, you know, learning artistic skills that he didn't learn during his apprenticeship, which included painting, sculpture, and he also continues to seek out the different art movements that are happening at the time. Coinciding with the beginning of the Art Nouveau movement, we also have the arts and crafts movement, which is happening in the UK, which has some parallels to the Art Nouveau movement, which would have also inspired him. And I am a true believer, obviously I'm over here living in Ireland, I'm a true believer in opening and broadening your mind through seeing the world through somebody else's eyes. And the best way to do that is to go and live amongst the people and witness their day to day, and witness what inspires them, and witness what makes them happy and what brings them sadness. And this is what he did. And it really is the beginning of seeing a world of opportunities for himself. So he comes back after his 2-year stay in London and returns to Paris. And this is where he then starts cultivating his style, and he is quickly recognized by some of the major prominent jewelry houses of the time, which included Boucheron, Cartier, and in particular caught the eye of Henri Verver. And if you've ever looked at the book that Henri Verver created,
Alyce is looking at it.
I'm looking at it right now.
It's right behind me in our bookshelf here.
It's the French jewellery of the 19th century. I've read the English version, and it is basically every massive, incredible, inspiring piece of jewelry that came out of France during the 19th century and the creators. And there's a part in it that's almost like a love letter to René Lalique, because Henri Verver takes his hat off to him. He gives him all of his flowers. He truly believes that he is an artist of the century, and his work just goes to show you that he was.
He was passionate, but he's also very confident in his abilities. And the Henri Verver, the book, I'd say almost any very serious antique jewelry shop is going to have a copy of this book, even though it's difficult to get your hands on a copy, especially the English version, right? But Lalique confided in Henri Verver that his deep down desire was to produce something never seen before. And Verver recounts an incident that highlights Lalique's confidence and unique vision. And it was about that brooch that I mentioned that was rejected by Boucheron. And interestingly enough, Boucheron Lalique actually went off and made it by himself. But once he actually made it, Boucheron thought, oh, this is great. This brooch is great. And they actually ended up purchasing it off him. You know, made a lot of copies, sold it. I suppose Boucheron probably just needed to see it, because if you imagine any business, they get probably lots of people giving them ideas, but he actually took it to the next step and made it. As you said, he didn't come from a very wealthy background like some of the Cartier boys.
Exactly. Well, even the Cartiers,
the original Cartier one came from nothing.
He also came from nothing as well. But in this period, even with the raw talent that he had, freelancing was not going to make him rich. Okay, so freelancing and creating pieces for places like Boucheron was not going to, it was going to pay the bills, but it wasn't going to make him rich or a household name. It was going to go under the name of Boucheron. It wasn't going to go under the name of René Lalique.
And he learned that because Boucheron got the brooch. He did all the creative work. They sold many copies. He learned that.
Exactly. But he understood something that a lot of the men in this time who were trying to climb the ladder understood, which was that he needed capital to be able to take it to the next step. And capital usually came in the form of marital connections. And in this case, his mother saw that there was an advantageous marriage that was available and introduced him to a woman called Marie-Louise Lambert, who was going to receive a sizable inheritance. I find this like very much like a Jane Austen novel, where you're like, but reversed, because the man is trying to woo the woman to get the money. So they do get married, and it was not a romantic love, but
I'm sure there was some romance there.
No. But
maybe
Lalique later described his marriage as his best decision ever.
The true romantic.
And recognized the opportunities that it afforded him. And the marriage took place in 1887. And really it is thanks to Marie-Louise's financial backing that allowed him to set up his first workshop. And this is where the true Lalique legacy begins.
Yeah, so as we were just discussing, Alyce, his marriage gave him the breathing space to set up his first workshop, which obviously gave him more creative freedom and opportunity to develop the kind of revolutionary characteristics that we now associate with Lalique. So Lalique's pieces are notable for their striking resemblance to sculpture and painting. And it's often thought that Lalique could have been a sculptor. He could have gone down a different path, and thanks be to God for the jewellery world, he didn't. But unlike the jewellery of the Victorian era, which often conveyed kind of, we've talked about acrostic jewellery, or jewellery that had kind of hidden, codified meanings in a very restrained Victorian way, Lalique's creations are celebrated for their uncoded, expressive visual storytelling, almost fantastical nature.
It's whimsy, right? It's whimsy in jewelry. And now I wouldn't particularly say that his designs are my style. I like big and bold and chunky, but let myself. But what I look at when I see Lalique pieces as a specialist in these particular periods and antique jewels is I see artistry. Now, to me, I don't think a lot of his pieces are particularly wearable, but I love to look at them. Like I'm transfixed by what I'm looking at. And if I was trying to explain to somebody what a Lalique piece looked like and you had no idea, I would say, think like a pixie world, or like a world that is filled with fairies and mermaids, and
almost you can't tell the real from the made up.
Think fantasy, like cosplay, that kind of like elf ears and
Lord of the Rings kind of.
Yeah, and like a medieval touch to it, but very sensual at the same time. Celebration of the woman's body, like a celebration of beautiful bone structure in the face, the use of materials that were considered semi-precious or non-precious at all. So bronze was used, bone was used. He had an absolute obsession, I would say, with opal, which if I were to choose a stone that was to represent him, it would be an opal, because opals are always different. They're always magical, fantasy-like. And he took two things, basically. He took almost the Renaissance period, the paintings that you see from the Renaissance period.
He was an excellent historian as well.
Yeah.
He loved, and that was his favorite time period. So again, it's just a blend of all these things. So it's good to be a well-rounded individual.
Yeah, so he took if you look at the women's bodies from the Renaissance period, where we've got this really like, it shows a very realistic, beautiful woman's body. And then think of all of the myths that you've ever heard from every culture in the world, and then mix it together, add color to it, and then basically just chop and change it, shake it in a bottle, and then that is Lalique.
You summed up perfectly what Lalique is like there, and it's really
not really. It's very hard to.
Everyone who heard the very eloquent description there will take something different to it, but that's probably correct, right? So, and again, I'd be like you. I love looking at Lalique designs. I'm a bit nervous to have them in store because they're usually made from plique jour enamel or glass, and I'm like, oh my god, I hope someone doesn't drop that, right? But
yes,
he renewed the art of jewellery by defending the value of design, superior to the monetary value of the actual gems. And this is a key thing that we saw with Fabergé as well. Okay, Lalique and Fabergé both use really valuable gems. Like they've got diamonds, they've got, and we talk about, he liked opals, right? But opals are very valuable gems, right? Some of them.
But not at the time. Like this wasn't something that you looked at and went at that particular time. It would have been a kind of curiosity. It would have been more of like, oh yeah, like this is a cool thing. Nowadays, a really good opal can outweigh the price of a diamond.
Oh yeah.
But not in those periods.
He was all about the design and creating, these breathtaking stories with a piece. You could look at a piece of Lalique and you could tell a story just by looking at it. And it was never about displaying the wealth. This is because he's an artist, right? He was there. He wanted to move the spectator. And he famously said, better to seek beauty than display luxury. Spirit should take precedence over matter. It sums it up perfectly. So design, he saw it as he was creating pieces of art that were also jewelry, but it's you said some of it's not completely wearable. Like he made a lot of like breastplates, which were I mean, you can't really move very much with these things on, right?
No, but it's not about that. And that's one thing that I've seen with some of the most revolutionary, forward-thinking jewelry houses in the world, especially in our firm favorite series, was this spirit of the jewel. And, you know, that particular quote could have easily have been said by Carl Fabergé.
Yes.
He could have said the exact same thing, and he almost did say the exact same thing in a different way.
But you and I know this from the jewelry trade, that there's some dealers and it's all about the stone. Like, it's all about the stones or the metals or, you know, how much gold is in it, how good that stone is. But there's some dealers and you look at their stuff and it's like, it's not about that at all.
I mean, you know, we've traveled and we've done fairs all over the world, and I'll never forget one time we were away at a fair and Matthew and I had this incredible, one-of-a-kind Cartier piece. We'd hidden it away because we were only going to show those who understood what they were looking at. Otherwise, it becomes something that people nonchalantly see and they're like, oh, you know, whatever. So we had this piece and we had brought it specifically for a few people to see, but we were in conversation with another dealer and they asked to see the piece. Now, the item was created in full yellow gold. So it was a yellow gold piece. And the dealer proceeded to take the piece out of its box and put it on scales and then said, you know, whatever the price of gold was at that time. And I kind of looked at them and I was like, you know, yeah, but you don't go to the Louvre and expect to pay for the price of the paint of the Mona Lisa, do you? You have to understand that there is a form of artistic expression that cannot be replicated, that is one-off, and that is what you pay for with these pieces. It's not the piece of bone, it's not the gold, it's not any of that. It's how it has been sculpted into something else. You don't look at the Statue of David and go, that is a beautiful marble. You like look at the sculpture and look at the work that it took to create it. You don't pay for the marble, you pay for the end product.
And funny enough, just on that bracelet, a few minutes later, a different dealer, you know, I think we only showed it to two dealers. And the different dealer looked at it.
He couldn't be without it.
He just looked at it. Oui, oui, la forme c'est très joli. La forme c'est parfait, parfait. Oui, la taille, la forme, j'aime bien. And he was saying like the form, like the shape, the architecture of it.
So if anyone out there is trying to understand this, you have to put a different hat on. You have to put different glasses on. This is treasure that you're looking at, and it should be viewed as very individual, unique art.
Well, Alyce, let's talk about a few of these pieces. I mean, to be honest, we could do a whole series on Lalique, I'd imagine. There is even a Lalique museum.
There's a few.
There's a few.
The one that I'm dying to go to that I haven't been to is the one that's in Lisbon in Portugal.
The
Gulbenkian. It's in Lisbon. Anyway, I was in Lisbon a couple of years ago and I forgot that it was there.
Gulbenkian Museum.
That's what I said. So this is, you know, usually I leave, you know, words that I don't know how to pronounce very well to Matthew, because Matthew will always have a crack at anything. He'll literally pretend that he knows how to say anything and he'll just like go there.
That's absolutely correct, but I don't pretend like I can say it. I actually admit the fact I cannot say it, but I'll still have a go at it.
Exactly.
Which is kind of my philosophy in life. So do and ask questions later.
Let's move on to our very first. So usually with the Firm Favorites, if you go back and listen to the Firm Favorites series, Matthew and I usually chose a piece each for the firm that we were talking about.
To represent what the business is about.
But this time we're going to be discussing 3 pieces of Lalique, just because we want to. And the first piece is of course, you know, people, it's me, an opal tiara. So in our last episode, our 99th episode, we did an opal tiara. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's the only opal tiara that I know of, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, no, there's one more. There's definitely one more. And of course, this tiara, this Lalique piece, which can be viewed in the Musée des Arts Décoratifs in Paris, which we have seen, and I have seen this particular piece, is a mermaid tiara, Matthew.
I think it summarizes a lot of what Lalique's pioneering approach to jewellery is all about, because it both has the themes and the materials which distinguish his work. So the opal that he loved, and then the theme, of course, you know, metamorphic women, right? You can, yeah, no, that's a key
I want to
word.
be a metamorphic woman, especially this one, because let me explain the tiara to you. So it has like this mermaid at the front of the tiara, and she's holding an large odd-shaped opal in her arms above. Like she's extending her arms. It almost could be the moon. She's holding it. She looks incredible. And then goes down to her body. Obviously, she's a mermaid, so she's naked from the waist up. And then she goes down, and her bottom part of her body actually splits into two tails. Oh, it's amazing. But the tails itself, they kind of sit above your temples. And these particular tails aren't really like your typical like fish tail. They have almost like Ursula tentacle finishes. So they've got like the suction cups that octopuses have, and they curl out and around. This is all done in bronze, by the way. And then it extends out, these octopus limbs, they extend out and they curl around an opal, a really large opal on either side. And these opals are carved. They're carved with schools of fish that, it's absolutely
like
mesmerizing.
We'll put a link in the show notes to it, and you have to almost see it to visualize how this actually goes onto somebody's head as well. I was looking at the picture there from the front, and I was kind of like, how does that go onto someone's head? But if you look from the side, there's a side angle, and you can really see it must look incredible on.
It was made for someone, so it was literally made for Martin de Behue.
Hold on, let me have a crack at this. Martin de Behage.
De Behage.
Behag.
Behag. I think she'd probably prefer Behag instead of Behog, to be honest, Matthew. But she was a wealthy French aristocrat, and she passionate art collector. And this particular piece, like, she was known for loving rare books, antiquities. She, you know, many of her pieces that were in her personal collection have ended up in the Louvre, the British Museum, and the Getty. So that kind of shows you what her tastes were and how they still today are considered very high level.
Extremely high level. It's an amazing piece, and I think it shows Lalique's love of opals and not using value, like necessarily, in inverted commas, valuable metals, right? And there's a nice quote I think we should give. I think you have a lovely way of.
No, Matthew, I'm going to let you do this one, because this is actually about his love of opals, Lalique's love of opals, how enamored he was with opals. And like all good friends who are poets, a poem was written about him and his obsession with this gemstone, which actually could probably be translated to you as well, Matthew, because you're obsessed with opals too.
Right. Robert de Montesquieu, he says, and this is translated from French, right?
This is a poem to Lalique's passion for opals. Take it away, Matthew.
I know a jeweler of opals enamored, whom the purest diamond cannot tempt. Only the pale flame gem will he carve, whose iridescence has him for a lover kept.
Back to Martin, who owned the mermaid tiara before we move on to our next piece. I love that when she separated from her husband after a very troubled marriage, this is when she got this particular tiara. And she traveled the world abroad on her private houseboats, Le Lotus, Le Nirvana, and Le Tanix. And she was in the search of rare works of art. Imagine being on a houseboat traveling the world with your mermaid tiara created for you by Lalique, divorced, living your best life, art hunting. Oh my gosh, I love her.
The next piece we're going to talk about is a piece of jewelry that you might not necessarily hear about today, and it's called a pectoral, which for anyone who's into the gym will know is around the breast, and it is a brooch, a type of brooch, but it's much bigger and it's known for its large size, almost worn like a chest plate.
Yeah, it's a bit like a stomacher that you see from the earlier periods, specifically Georgian and early Victorian Romantic era. But this one is so fabulous. It consists of 9 intertwined serpents, and they're all made out of carved gold with beautiful enamel and the snakes. Now, I was speaking actually to Fenia about this because I was trying to explain to her that we've done a few pieces on Lalique, but we wanted to choose 3 really fabulous pieces that display his kind of artistic flair and use of different materials. This one here is more traditional because it does have gold and enamel, but I really wanted to go with this one because a lot of our listeners, although you may not have watched the Harry Potter movies, would be aware of the Harry Potter movies. And in the second movie, it's called The Chamber of Secrets. The Chamber of Secrets itself has these incredible large serpents that kind of make the way down through the center of the chamber. And it has a walkway.
That's just the part just before Frodo puts the ring in the volcano. That part.
Okay, everybody don't listen to him. And the snake heads, if you go back and look at that, if you look at the snake heads in that particular part of the chamber, they are 150% taken from this pectoral object created by Lalique. Of course, Slytherin, which is the famed house from Harry Potter, is the serpent or snake house. And so they've obviously taken inspiration from this particular pictorial. But one thing I love about this particular piece, it's fierce. Like the snakes look like they're on Medusa's head and they're about to turn you to stone. And I love it. I would definitely wear it.
Yeah, incredible looking. It's one of those pieces that I look at and I think, where do you even start to create it? Well, like, where? It's hard to say, but it was purchased by a very wealthy billionaire, Armenian-born, Mr. Gulbenkian.
Also, Mr. Gulbenkian amassed a collection of almost 200 Lalique pieces. So, you know, his collection from 1899 to 1927, the only thing that I can say about him is he is a super fan. You know, like you see super fans today, they show up, they're there, they're at every show, they're wearing the merchandise, they're getting everything done, they know everything about the artist. Mr. Gulbenkian, he opens up a museum in 1957 with all of the things that he's amassed from his collection. And thank goodness he did.
Yes, the aforementioned Gulbenkian Museum in Lisbon. I can't believe you forgot to go there. That's very un-Alyce of you. But it'll still be there, so you can always go back, I suppose. And the last piece we're going to look about in Lalique. I mean, I know when we were chatting during the week with, chatting with the team about this, it was so hard to cut it down just to 3 pieces. As if we could do an episode on each piece, right? And but the last one is one that we've actually seen when we went to Paris to see it. And interestingly, it was a piece that we all identified as just incredibly well done, very interesting before we actually did the total research on it. So it's really interesting that without knowing anything about it, really, we all picked it up and was like, oh my God, this is a really, really beautiful piece of jewellery. And it is called the Kiss brooch, made circa 1904 to 1906. And I think it's one of my favorites. And it's one of the things, Lalique obviously really liked glass, right? And he went on to build an amazing glass production business after, right? But one of the reasons he really liked glass is you can make great designs with relief in it, right? So you get this really nice perception of depth, and it almost gives motion to the pieces. And I think that motion is captured really well in this brooch. And when you're looking at it, right, you really have to absorb it, right? Because what you've got 2 faces that are almost reaching out to kiss each other. Just that moment before they actually kiss. You know that moment. I don't have much experience of it, but I've heard about it, right? But it's quite intimate. It's sensual. One is a intaglio and the other is a cameo. So one side of the face is a piece of glass. One is the intaglio, which is carved into the glass. The other side sticks out from the glass. That's the cameo. So it gives amazing perspective and depth and relief, all these things that Lalique absolutely loved. And it's captured this intimate moment perfectly.
Yeah, so Lalique himself, like in the 1900s, had won so many awards, the most prestigious for his jewelry pieces in the 1900 fair. This is just after it, and this is where he starts to wrap up on his jewelry creation and starts to move into a different direction. And this particular piece is kind of the bridgeway into what he will become.
Yes.
So this is why we chose this last piece, because glass becomes synonymous with the Lalique name. Most people today, if they've heard of Lalique, wouldn't have realized that he did jewelry. Most people would associate him with glass, with in particular glass decanters and all
perfume bottles,
all different types of glass work and decoration and objects. But he in particular isn't known widely in the world outside of our jewelry sphere. For jewelry, he's known for glass. So I love this particular piece because it merges the two together. It shows which direction he came from and which direction he's going. And it also really displays his romanticism, because he is, when you look at his pieces, in particular his jewelry items, they are so romantic. They're romanticized. It makes...
Well, there's an inscription on it.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very romantic.
Yes.
I mean, and it's romanticized, but it's quite blatantly in your face as well, right? So the inscription on the side of this piece, it's quite a thick piece, right? It says, "I dream of kisses that will last forever." It's in French. And this line comes from a poem by Sally Prudhomme, a contemporary of Lalique. And, the poem expresses a desire for couples to remain always together. So, I mean, it doesn't get more romantic than that.
But it's not only that. Like, look at the subject matter. So we've got a man here and a woman here. They've got roses on thorned roses around their head. The surrounding of the actual brooch itself is done in almost like thorns from a rose. And
the claws, like the little claws look like thorns.
Exactly. And then when you read the inscription, which is on the side, it's actually in red enamel. And so it almost like, it ties almost like blood into it as well. So it's very much like almost like a pact, a frozen moment in time, a lover's bond that this piece is. And I find that really a nod to his, number one, saying goodbye to jewellery, and number two, his pure romantic French soul, and his then transition into his obsession with glass.
The transition to glass, it became more and more dominant until about 1910, that it almost had ousted, every other form of artistic expression, really. And he hated to be copied. Lalique really hated to be copied. And as we said at the start, as he said to Henri Verver, he wanted to create something that was never seen before and something that couldn't be copied. And actually, a lot of his glass that he made it in such a way that the molds had to be destroyed to get the glass out. So you literally can't make it again. It's literally once off. And totally inefficient.
But like that just really does speak to artist and artistry. It's very similar to, like, I know I keep on drawing parallels to Fabergé, but it's very similar to Carl Fabergé. Like, he did not want somebody else to be able to create an egg.
Fabergé worked with enamel a lot, which is basically glass.
Yeah, so he just did not want to be copied. But the glass period. Now, the reason why we're gonna cover it very shortly, because we're dealing with our 100th episode, and why we chose Lalique is because in 1925, which is 100 years ago this year, in 2025, if you're listening in 2026 or 2030, but in 2025, it is 100 years since the Art Deco exhibition that happened in Paris.
It is.
And for this exhibit, Lalique won so many awards for his glass work. But in particular, the most amazing piece that was created for this particular show was a fountain. And this fountain was viewed by anybody and everybody who came into the exhibit. It would have been impossible to not see it because it stood front and center in the middle of the Art Deco exhibition. And if you go in, you'll see in our show notes, you'll see a picture. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen that. I mean, exhibition, I don't know if it quite covers it. There was 15,000 exhibitors at this exposition. It's on over 50 acres of land, and there was over 15 million visitors. This is and this is why it's created a movement. Like, it really created a movement. But this particular, I don't know if you call it a sculpture or a fountain or a design, it's really breathtaking.
It was 15 meters high, and it was a fountain of glass adorned with 128 glass canyons. Like, it was illuminated from within with the glass, almost like looking as if it was glowing, and then water spouting out of it with the light inside, which would have been almost like space-like. If you were in this period looking at that,
that's exactly.
You would have thought it was out of this world. But this would have been right up his alley, this particular exhibit, because the 1925 exhibit, for the first time ever, it was specifically stated that there was to be no revivals, that there was to be nothing old. Everything had to be modern, new, and new ideas. And so for Lalique, this would have been a green light to be as crazy and push the boundaries as much as he possibly could. And you know what? It was made for him because he won nearly every prize that you can for glasswork or for objet that was available at the show. So we wanted to finish it there because it's been 100 years. Unfortunately, Lalique himself passed away in the 1940s.
45, yes.
So he lived through a very turbulent period of time, seeing 2 world wars, the end of, not even seen the end of World War II by the time he passed away. And during that time, still being able to have such an artistic flair is inspirational. And of course, we still talk about him today because he did realize his dream, which was to create something that nobody had ever seen before.
We're not going to do our typical gem Trivial Pursuit, but we're going to do a very special edition called the Jewellery-weds edition. Just see how well 100...
The Jewellery-weds. Jewellery-weds.
The Jewellery-weds of Gem Trivial Pursuit. So buckle up for this one. Let's see, 100 episodes, which is probably like 100 hours and probably way more of talking to each other. At least let's see how well we know each other.
Okay, Matthew. What is my biggest jewelry pet peeve?
Your biggest jewelry pet peeve. Oh God, I actually thought of this totally. Ross, I didn't understand the game until recently. I would say your biggest jewelry pet peeve, like yours personally.
Hurry up. This is supposed to be quick fire.
Yeah, well, the quiet fire can be quick now, but
Jewellery-wed, hurry up.
Getting something that you think you should get because other people have it, but not what you actually want.
No.
Okay.
But that is one of my pet peeves, but not my ultimate pet peeve. My ultimate pet peeve is people who lick their fingers to take their jewelry off. Okay, Matthew. If I were a gemstone, Matthew, which one would I be and why? Think carefully, Matthew.
If you were a jewelry gemstone, which one would you be and why? Well, you could say opal because you're Australian.
Ew, I'm not.
And you know, opal has water in it, and you're at least 70% water.
Then everybody's an opal.
I would say you would be a spinel. I would say you'd be a spinel.
No, I would be a nephrite.
Okay.
Because it's Pounamu, which is a treasure from my cultural background.
Okay. Wow, very nice. And just to clarify, we have wrote down these answers before. So
yes.
There is no switcheroo going on here.
No, there's no switcheroo. Okay. Question 3, which I have written down, and let's see if Matthew can get it correct, because he's got the first 2 incorrect. If I could raid the jewelry box of any historical figure, who would I choose?
Maria Felix.
Correct. I actually, yeah.
That's too easy.
Yeah. Okay.
You'll never get mine.
You got one. You got one. You got one. 4. If I could wear one piece of jewelry from your collection, Matthew, your personal collection, which would I pick?
My clattering.
No.
No.
You get one answer.
Okay.
So your clattering is no.
Okay.
It is actually your mum's Albert chain.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. Shout out to Gail for having good jewelry tastes.
Mm.
Number 5. Which episode is my favorite?
Which is your favorite episode? I'd say it's got to be Ulla Tillender's episode.
No.
Really?
No. I mean,
that's your favorite to do, maybe. But
that was my favorite one to do. But the one that I like listening to the most.
Murph the Surf. No, it definitely wouldn't be that.
No.
Maria Felix.
No.
Okay,
but it's similar because it was the 1970s episode.
Okay.
Because it talks about Maria Felix and everything. Okay. All right, Matthew. You got 1 out of the Jewellery-weds. Lucky we're not actually Jewellery-weds. You don't know me very well.
Okay, Alyce. Question for you is, what is my biggest jewelry pet peeve?
Leaving jewelry out.
No, and I'm going to tell you, it was really strange what you said. What you said is exactly what I had for my own one. And just to give people context, when you're in a store sometimes and people come in and want to show you their jewelry, they lick their knuckles And you might even realize you're doing it. And listen, like it's the shop where everything goes there, right? But because you need to lick the whole way around your knuckle, the knuckle almost ends up like in people's mouth, and then the ring gets slipped off and handed to you. And literally, I had the same one. So, but anyway.
Isn't that so strange?
Yes.
Okay, go. Number 2.
What gemstone would I be if I could be a gemstone?
See, I would have said opal. So I'm going to stick with that.
No. I gave it away. Spinel. Spinel. I think I'd be a spinel. Often mistaken for something else more obvious.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not doing well here. Go. Next. 3.
If I could raid any jewelry collection in history, what one would I pick?
I would say I was going to say the original Irish Dublin Castle.
I'd look for the Pope's jewelry collection.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's understandable, Matthew.
Okay. If I could have one piece of jewelry from your jewelry collection, which piece would it be?
And is it for you to wear? Have you chosen based on what you would wear?
Yes. And I'll tell you, it's not your Chubagas necklace because I figured it wouldn't fit me.
No, it definitely wouldn't.
You have a petite neck. I've got a thick neck. Thankfully, it's good for business purposes sometimes.
I'd say my Mizpah ring.
I actually had your gladiator and ring.
Oh, yeah.
I like that one.
Okay. Oh, my gosh. I haven't got one yet, Matthew.
Okay. Well, you're going to get the last one.
The tail end of the episode.
Yes, that is my favorite episode. So
it is. I knew that you were actually going to choose that. So that's why I didn't choose that episode for myself, because I adore that episode. It also has a lot of memories attached to it.
The Alma Peel episode, for sure.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I think that was a draw at least. So well
no,
done.
it wasn't. You got one and I got 0.
No, you got 1.
No, I didn't.
You got the Ulla Tundra episode.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's all for this special 100 episode celebration of Gem Pursuit. A very heartfelt thank you to all of our listeners, and with a special mention to those of you who have been on this journey with us from the very beginning, quite a few years ago now. When we started this little podcast in our small shop in Dublin, we never imagined it would reach so many people all over the world, and we had so much fun doing it. Lisa, I want to give you a very special thank you for tolerating, putting up with, enduring. I don't know which word you'd like to use, but I just thank you for sharing all your knowledge and stories and flair and joy with us.
Thank you, Matthew. I also want to make a special thanks to all of those special guests who have been on the podcast over the years. Wonderful for me because I've met some of my heroes doing this, and you know, contrary to what they say that you should never meet your heroes, everybody that that we've come across, that we've interviewed throughout the years, have been so open with their knowledge and also so open with us about their personal stories. And it's just been so touching and things that I will remember for the rest of my life. So thank you.
And of course, we have to mention Veronique Gagan, our onshore, offshore resource based in Paris, who does a lot of the research and project management. Darcy Skelly, who does a lot of the design work and inputs into the team meetings about the podcast too. Sarah Morley, who keeps the shop ticking over, which actually allows us the opportunity to do this, which is absolutely fundamental, and that role is so important. And recently, Mia Sagudi, who's adding a real flair to the research that we do and bringing a great element to it. And I couldn't finish up without giving a very special thanks to our producer. Ross has been with us to France, to Finland, to Dublin, to London. And, you know, he's just been a great sounding board. And, you know, you don't hear him on the podcast, but his influence and his experience permeates the whole way. So I've no doubt if you enjoy Gem Pursuit, it's got something to do with those people that I work with. And I'm so lucky to have such a fantastic team on Gem Pursuit. But for myself, Matthew Weldon, I just want to say goodbye. Thanks again. And here's to the next 100.